Coming up on this episode, grab a bottle, pop the cork, and pour a glass of an exciting episode all about the world of right now. This is Up for Debate, episode number something I don't remember. Recorded January 14th, 2021. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the debate podcast for the two hosts who agree on everything. I am Sean Jennings, joined as always by our own sommelier. It is Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
How's it going, Sean? You know, they don't pay us enough to know the number of episodes we're on anyway. So
honestly,
I say just wing it.
Well, two things. One, that is the one part of the show I do re-record later, so I'm not that worried about screwing it up. But also, it's when you have two podcasts. So this is 196, by the way. And on Up for Debate, or on Don't Panic this coming week is going to be 300. So that's why I kind of got confused.
Wow, 300 episodes of Don't Panic.
Unbelievable. And we'll be at 200 in a couple months. Oh,
that before the show, Sean and I were conversing spin-offs and spin-off podcasts, and it just came to me that I think the topic we were talking about, we probably should call that podcast Panic. That would be a Sean and Matt Panic podcast. About,
Panic with power tools.
Yes, about house maintenance.
It's just a lot of like buzzsaw sounds and then us screaming. You know,
finding different things to panic about.
Absolutely.
Not owning a home. Yeah. So we got a wine-filled episode on today's Up for Debate. We're going to be sommelier. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, Matt. Are you familiar with a sommelier?
I think that's French for a fancy wine snob. Am I right about that?
Well, it actually translates to wine steward, a trained and knowledgeable wine professional. You actually have to be certified to be a sommelier, and it's quite difficult to do. The Court of Master Sommeliers is the independent examining body that actually awards these certificates and makes you an official sommelier.
Wow. So you have to be board certified to
Absolutely.
become one of these wine
You actually
experts.
get a master's diploma. It was introduced. A total of 249 people from around the world have become master sommeliers. So it's very, very elite group.
That's, I know I like to joke about them being wine snobs and things like that, but I think I really give them credit. Like it's a craft like anything else. It's a craft that you have to know, that you have to kind of hone your nose, as it were. I don't think any old person can just like detect notes of, oak. Is that something that they detect in wine or chocolate, or and they like smell a wine and they're like, I detect hints of cinnamon and cardamom in this wine.
Yeah, I mean, wine is incredibly scientific. I mean, that's one of the interesting things about it. As much as it is an art, it's also a science. I mean, you've got to know the acidity of the wine, and you've got to know, obviously, the difference between a 69 wine and a 73 wine, and the different regions and the different grapes, and all these sort of things that go into it. That's why you have to study for so long, and it's so difficult, is because there's a lot there.
Yeah, it is very fascinating. It's a fascinating world. Being a wine expert, I imagine there's probably a lot of elements of history in it too, because you have to know, say if a wine was produced in France during like the 1930s and 40s, obviously it's going to World War II and the surrounding impact of that is gonna you could literally taste it in the wine. Like the type of barrels might have been different because of an oak shortage or anything like that. So it's a fascinating world.
Now, Matt, I brought a surprise for you this episode.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
I know. I'm a real treat.
Are you going to drink it in front of me? Is that what you're going to do?
Matt, I brought you a bottle of wine.
Wow, thank you, Sean. That looks great.
For my own personal collection. Came in the mail today, as a matter of fact. That's why I was thinking about wine. I just ordered some wine. And this is L'Atelier du Sud. Right there, if you can see that. It is a 2019 Voigner from France. It says on here, each bottle of L'Atelier du Sud invokes the comforting beauty of the countryside and is lovely on its own or alongside lighter French fare. This Voigner has a bright accents of tangerine, honeysuckle, and a hint of vanilla. So, Matt, I'm going to crack this bad boy open.
That sounds really yummy.
I've got my, and of course, I just want to point out, I am opening this bottle of wine surrounded by easily $7,000 worth of computing equipment. So hopefully it doesn't go wrong, but I think I'll be okay. Now, Matt, while I'm opening this, and I'll see if I can get the cork pop right up to the mic so the folks at home can hear it. As I twist my corkscrew here, get it nice.
Sean, you have a really archaic-looking corkscrew.
No, this is like it's not a fancy one.
Wine opener, I should say.
Let's see if I can.
Corkscrew is just part of it.
Oh, here we go. Quiet. Did you hear that?
Yes, that was a very nice sound.
It's a very nice sound. Now, you know, Matt,
sounds.
What fancy people do when they open wine, I learned this from fancy people, is you have to smell the cork.
Yes, fancy people do
Oh.
that.
God,
Do you know anybody that saves the corks? I know people that save them.
I know, I don't know fancy people who save them, or collector. I know people who save them to make dorky wall art.
Yeah, that's exactly what what I've observed. I've seen people will save the wine cork and they'll write the date on it if it was a memorable date, like an engagement or anniversary or something like that.
There you go.
Yeah, that is a very gorgeous looking wine.
Yes, this is my really Bully Hill Vineyards glass. Yeah, this is so what
taste.
Oh, it's very sweet, very airy. Oh, you got to whiff it, and then let's take a taste here. Wow, that is so nice. That's so nice. It's a little tart. It's a little on the drier side. It's sweet, but it's on the drier side. Matt, I'm glad I could share this glass with you. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers to you as I drink.
No, part of the reason
water.
It's kind of like wine, right?
I have some water right here.
I mean, part of the reason. So you and I attempted an ill-fated episode on New Year's Eve and the history of New Year's, and it imploded, so it never got published. But New Year's resolutions. I'm a big beer drinker. I like beer. I'm one of my Brett Kavanaugh. I like beer. Okay. Hey, is that joke still current enough?
Boys like beer. Girls like beer.
I like beer.
Do you like beer?
And but beer is a lot of calories. It's very filling. It's not particularly good for you. So I'm going to try, rather than not drink, I'm going to try to drink more wine instead of beer. So I joined a wine subscription club, and I'm going to be getting some bottles of wine sent to me. So that's why I want to learn more about wine.
That sounds delightful. I too have kind of turned a corner with I think my beer consumption has gone way down. I think since leaving college, I still do have the occasional beer, but I don't really buy it as much as I guess once did. It's not something I go for right away. But wine, I feel like having a wine with dinner is it pairs better. I know that some people will say beer is a wide variety. It's not just like a Heineken or a Bud Light. You can get IPAs and different varieties of microbrew, and they're designed to pair with things. But a beer in itself is almost like a meal. It is almost like a meal in itself because it is so filling. I too have kind of resolved to get a little bit more invested in wine. So I think this is going to be a good venture for both of us.
Now, Matt, let me start with a question here. Do you know the difference between red wine and white wine?
Okay. Well, I'll preface this as I always do, is that I know nothing about anything, and especially wine. So I'm not an expert at all about any of this. So I'm just going to completely guess on this particular question. I'll just say it has to do with the grapes.
Wine is made of grapes, so everything about wine has to do with grapes.
Right. So I'm saying the red wine comes from red grapes, and the white wine comes from green grapes, right?
Good guess, but no.
Wow.
That's actually incorrect. For the record, I did not know this till I Googled it about 10 minutes before the show. Red wine comes from the grape skin. So they extract the color from the grape skin, in addition to using the grape interiors. Red wine from dark-colored grape varieties, and obviously can be in various shades of colors. White wine, they don't use the skins. It's only the inner pulp of the grape, which, by the way, can also be red or green, and that's why you have kind of different shades of white wine. They just don't use the outer skin, because that's where the color is, and that's what makes it white. And there's also other varieties of wine, obviously. Rosé actually incorporates some of the color from the skin, but not enough to be considered red wine. There's also sparkling wine, which is obviously wine with bubbles in it. Fruit wine, which is wine made from fruits that aren't grapes, like apples and berries. And of course, we've talked about mead, honey wine as well, made from fermenting honey with water.
That's very surprising. I went my entire life thinking that it had to do with the color of the grape, but I guess that's an old wives' tale then, or just a common misconception. The most recent wine that I drank was a couple weeks ago. I had it actually turned out to be a dessert wine. It was a dark plum wine. It was very good. It was very, very sweet though. I think I tend to gravitate towards wines that are, I think depending on what I'm eating, like if it pairs with that. I may not know much about wine, but I know enough of it where you're not supposed to drink dark red wine with fish.
Right, and you're supposed to drink it with beef, and yeah.
Yeah. So I like I think I like the fruitier wines though. Like I very much like, I'm a big fan of plum wines and anything that derived from plums. I'm a big cider person, so I guess like the different varieties of fruit.
Elderberry
wine is very nice.
Yeah, apple wine, any of that kind of stuff will really pop for you. I mean, I sort of have an odd policy myself. Is I always drink red wine with meals and white wine with not meals, basically. Which I know isn't always the proper way to do it, but I don't find myself ever sitting, not eating, and being like, God, I'd love a glass of red wine. No, I always want white when I'm just like doing this and just hanging out. But red with food is just phenomenal.
Now, when you drink do you like Merlot? I know Merlot is a variety of wine.
That's very good. Yes. No. So wines are traditionally, I mean, they're sort of that dry to sweet range that wines are graded on, and both in red and white. And so most people, I believe, drink traditionally sweeter white wines is kind of more common, which I don't think is surprising. On the white side, I don't really like a dry white. I do like that mid to sweeter white. On the red side, I will drink dry reds. And the really fruity reds, I'd rather go to a rosé at that point, which is going to be a little bit sweeter.
Yeah.
Split the difference.
There's like it's kind of like a spectrum of wine, basically, based on it. Like, I mean, you can categorize wine so many different ways. You can based on its nation of origin. You can categorize it based on its like you said before, the acidity and the content of the grape. You can categorize it based on its value,
its year, its color,
vintage. Which I think is that's got to be where they got the term vintage from, right? Like vineyard, vintage. You say something is vintage. I would assume that the connotation with wine came first, right?
Oh my God!
Can't confirm that, but
I thought you were such an idiot for saying that. I'm like, there's no friggin' way that's true. So the actual origin, if you back it all the way up, a few different versions, it's from the Latin vinum for wine and demere for remove.
All right.
So
I
it
guess
actually,
I do know stuff about stuff.
yeah, it says the actual definition of vintage is the year or place in which wine, especially wine of high quality, was produced.
Broken clocks are right twice a day, Sean.
Wow, that is wild. I'm learning so much tonight. This is a treat.
Apparently, you can also further categorize wine based on its style. So I guess that is the proper term is style, and the styles of wine. That's where you got your reds, your whites, your sparklings,
Yep,
your rosé, and then you have your dessert wines, which can further be broken down into other categories like your portos,
love a good port.
which are always very good.
Port is always my
Madeira.
Port is
Claret.
always my. You're out at a business dinner you're not paying for with some good pals, and they decide to get dessert, and you look so fancy when they're like, "We'll get dessert," and I'm like, "How about a glass of port?"
I'll just have a port.
And people look and they're like, because they're just like, because they'll do like an Irish coffee or something, and you're like, no, you get the port. And they're like,
I would
"Holy
not.
shit."
Yeah, I wouldn't mess with the Irish coffee. I can't
hate
drink
Irish
coffee
coffee.
past like 2 p.m. anymore. So,
I don't think
the
it's
port.
no, to be honest, because at that point I'd rather just have a cup of coffee. Like you've made a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah,
work.
I just meant coffee, general coffee.
Oh,
Coffee.
yeah.
I can't drink that like in the late.
When I
anymore.
was
It's bad.
when I was eating in Europe, they would have an espresso after dinner. It was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. They get the little cup of
Europeans
espresso.
would?
Yeah, my Dutch pals.
Wow, the Dutch are crazy.
Oh my!
I've maintained that my whole life pretty much, but the Dutch, they're mad.
Oh, you have no
Having
idea.
espresso after dinner, that's like the definition of insanity right there.
Yep.
You're asking for trouble pretty much.
I don't know how they ever slept.
You're
I
asking
really
to
don't.
just be up all night. Yeah. Yikes.
Yep.
Mead. Have you ever had mead, Sean?
I have not. I have not had mead.
I've had mead. A buddy of mine, long time ago, went to Germany and came back with mead, and I got to try some German mead. It's good. It's like I actually somehow that's categorized a wine, but isn't mead made with like beer though? Maybe there's two different types.
It's
of
fermented honey.
Whoa,
There's no beer in
okay.
mead.
So it is technically a wine because
Right.
it's made with a fermented. That's wild.
Yep.
Okay.
No, Matt.
I'm totally wrong. I thought mead was a type of beer, but anyway.
Matt, let me ask you a question. One thing that's really, trendy right now is wine has really gone from a beverage to an experience where people are really going gaga over these vineyard wine tastings, if you will, experiences. Have you ever done a wine tasting?
I have not. I have never been part of a wine tasting. It sounds really fancy though. It sounds like a fun time. It really sounds like a bachelorette type celebration. That's probably what I would think of first if I thought of a wine tasting.
That's very fair.
I honestly, I think I would probably feel cheated by the end of it because I would just feel like they're just giving me this wine because they want me to like buy bottles of their wine, and I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. So it would be very effective advertising on me.
But that's kind of what I like, though. Is like of all the things, we have here in the next town over a place called Table and Vine. It's like an alcohol superstore. It's like an alcohol Walmart. And they have the biggest wine section I've ever seen. And I'm terrified to go in it because at least beer labels will tell me like this is an IPA. I know what to expect. Even wines, it's like I can't even look at a bottle and know what I'm looking at. And that's kind of what I like about wine tastings. It's like I don't mind they're trying to sell me a bottle because if I drink a wine I like, I want to buy it. So if anything, I find that to be a great service to the public, that you can actually sample it before you try it, so you know what you're actually going to get.
Yeah. I think you have a good point there. There's always value in being able to taste the product before you get to purchase it. I usually just do what I do when I buy anything, and I like hastily look it up beforehand while I'm in the aisle, standing in front of it. And also I also base it on the label too. The label goes a long way with me.
With beer, I'm a sucker for that. I do aggressively buy on the label. Now, Matt, do you know what country consumes the most wine each year?
Oh, I would say there's got to. I feel like I'm going to be wrong, but I'm going to say it's probably Italy or France.
As measured in liters per capita, it is France.
I would say France. Yeah, I was going to say I was definitely leaning toward France. I think Italy maybe Italy produces the most or is close to producing the most.
If you're talking about production in terms of tons, Italy is number one. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So Italy produces the most. France consumes the most. I'm not surprised by that at all. that is exactly how I would have pictured it. What what would be kind of cool, and I'm not asking you to Google this or anything, but it would be kind of cool if somebody made a map, and I know it probably exists out there, but a map of like the favorite styles of wine in each country, like where it's like an infographic. Like I would wonder if like maybe in Northern Europe does it skew into lighter wines, because I know they like their dark wines in the Mediterranean. Is it like more like mead and stuff in Scandinavia because of like their Viking heritage and things like that? What does it look like over in Asia and in Africa? What's wine consumption like there? That could be interesting.
Yeah,
imagine like Eastern Europe. I mean Eastern Asia. You have your like you have like your sakes and your sojus and your basically like your rice based wines.
Yes,
fermented rice.
I had a sake for the first time last year.
Oh,
and I enjoyed it immensely.
I decided to make that a tradition, a New Year's tradition. So I think I discussed on our defunct New Year's Eve episode that will never see the light of day, sadly. I think I discussed that a New Year's tradition for my family is we eat Chinese food for dinner. And I decided to add to that this year by having a glass of plum sake every New Year's Eve or every New Year's Day to bring in a sweet New Year. Unfortunately, I forgot to do that because I left the wine at home. So, but that's going to be the new Year's tradition.
Nice.
From now on.
Nice. Hopefully, you haven't cursed this year by not doing it.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But who knows? And hopefully, there's time to undo it. Wine can also be used to cook with, Sean.
Yeah.
Are you interested in wine reductions?
I've never cooked with wine. Have you?
So, have I ever cooked with wine? Yes. Yes, I have. I have made chicken marsala, which is made with the marsala cooking wine. I made that in a slow cooker. It was very good. But what I remember is that buying the bottle of marsala wine was kind of expensive. And I only used it on that one recipe, and then the wine went bad, and I had to throw the rest of it out. So that was back when I was living in Virginia, and now in New Jersey, I don't think you can get. I could be wrong. Maybe they sell cooking wines in grocery stores, but there's no alcohol at all in, as far as I know, in New Jersey supermarkets. You have to go to like a liquor store to buy any kind of alcohol. Again, I could be completely off base. I've never looked for cooking wine in a New Jersey grocery store, but As far as I know, you can't get it. Other than that, though, oh, and I've made penny vodka with vodka, so that's not wine. That's just another form of alcohol that I've used to cook. And if we're on that wagon, I've also made gumbo with light beer.
Oh, okay, neat.
So there's some adventures in cooking with alcoholic beverages. But as far as wine goes, I think that's the only thing when I made the chicken marsala, which was very yummy. That's the only thing I've experimented. I've always wanted to make steak au poivre, which uses a wine reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually used, for the first time yesterday, I made a recipe with a new program called Hellofresh.
Oh, I love me some Hellofresh.
I figured you would be.
I've been with them
on board
on and off for years. Yeah.
Yeah. So we subscribed to a month. Thanks to my sister got us a week's worth of the HelloFresh, and we just decided to do like a month plan on top of that. And the first recipe of mine was we did chicken tikka, which was really good. And then last night we did it wasn't steak au poivre, but it was like a something very similar. It was steak with like a wine reduction, but that came in a little pouch, so I didn't really like make the sauce. The sauce was just there, and I was impressed by the amount of like real cooking I felt like I did.
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to be like, here, heat all this stuff up and put it in a bowl or on a plate. But it was more like no, you're the chef. Like, you get to like cook, but we bought all the ingredients for you.
Right.
And you like chop it up and peel them, and yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a good experience. So I made I wish I could remember the name of the steak, not au jus. Steak demi.
Ah, yes.
That's what it was. Yeah. So it was good. But other than those two experiences, I don't even know if I would count that as an experience with cooking with wine.
I will say, Matt, I'll say two things. One, HelloFresh, I remain a fan. I just haven't done it recently, but their meats are very good. Are they still very good?
They are.
I was shocked at the quality of the meat they were sending.
Yeah. So I've had a chicken dish
Yep.
and a beef dish, a steak dish, and I was impressed with the meat both times. And I'm impressed by the amount of produce you get.
Yep.
Especially with that steak dish, I had an entire meal, a second meal of leftover potatoes and carrots. Like, I still have some carrots in the fridge after eating it 2 nights in a row.
And the other tip I will give is keep those recipe cards. I kid you not, I have HelloFresh recipes that are, I think, 6 years old that I still remake because I loved the recipes so much. It's a shrimp and zucchini risotto that I make all the time. That was a HelloFresh box. And I still make it to this day.
Yeah, I'm keeping them in a folder.
Yeah.
I have like a folder that I'm just going to collect those cards as they come in. But that sounds really good. That shrimp risotto.
Now, Matt, can I sidetrack us for a minute? That has something to do absolutely nothing with, totally unrelated to wine.
Okay. Is it about our new sponsor, HelloFresh?
Use offer code DEBATE over at HelloFresh.com for a free month of meals.
If only.
Hey, look, I would gladly take that. You know what? They wouldn't even have to pay me in cash if they just sent me HelloFresh every week.
Yeah.
I'm a happy kid.
I would be good with that. I'd put a nice big poster right back here. HelloFresh.
HelloFresh, if you sponsor us, Matt will legally change his name to first name Hello, last name Fresh.
First name Hello, last name Fresh.
Mr. Fresh.
And Sean will be Fresh Hello.
So you get the one that makes some amount of sense. And mine is like, Mr. Hello.
My name's Fresh. Fresh Hello.
Oh, my God.
Mr. Hello?
For a lifetime of free meals, I would. I had a coworker whose dad for Christmas one year got them a year's worth of HelloFresh, which I'm sure was very expensive. But they're like, I never go to the grocery store, like very rarely.
That is the dream.
That is
the dream.
Right there. No, so Matt, I I was flipping. I'm one of the few people who still has cable, I think. And so I was flipping around the other night, and you'll never guess what movie was on.
Skyfall.
Ready Player One.
Oh.
Which I had not seen since I saw it in the theaters, so we could talk about it on the show. And Matt, I got to tell you, I was very surprised. The effects were much better than I remember them being. Like, I think Spielberg did a better job than he gets credit for, where the CGI, yes, it has a certain look that not everyone likes, but he's very consistent in that look, and the CGI in it is very comprehensive and well composed. Like, it's a nice looking movie. I'll give him that. However, the script is way worse than I remember it being in theaters. And I hated it the first time I saw it. And I was rewatching it, and it was the stupidest thing I had, because I forgot how much of it was just like pop culture reference, pop culture reference, pop culture reference, pop culture reference.
Remember this thing from the 80s? Remember this thing from the 80s?
And they shoot exposition at you so quickly, because the book is like a lot longer, obviously, and sets up a lot of this stuff. And to get through the whole movie in 2 hours, it shoots so much I have no idea how people who didn't read the book get this movie, because it makes no sense at all at the breakneck pace at which it happens.
Yeah, and when you go off of, I mean, when you look at the source material that you're basing your movie off of, it's amazing that movie even like sort of had like a semblance of logic to it. I remember reading the book and thinking like, well, how can they possibly have turned this into a movie? Like, these are all just references to things from the 80s. Like that was like everything that happened was just like, I quoted this entire movie because I love it so much. I remember seeing the movie War Games when it came out in theaters with Matthew Broderick, and I basically reenacted the whole movie. And
oh, like, wow. Rubik's Cube? Wow. You know, it's like but it was so funny to me because, and I will admit I'm a total dork for doing this, but what I do some nights is if I don't have anything interesting to watch, I will put on it like an NBA game, mute it, and listen to a podcast while watching the NBA game, which I don't think is an unreasonable thing to do.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest.
You need to listen to the game. And so what?
Not this podcast, but I do that.
You shouldn't listen to this podcast.
Maybe don't panic.
And so I was doing that, and then the game went to a commercial, so I flipped to Ready Player One and was watching it on mute. And I'm like, this movie looks a lot better than I remember it being. And I'm like watching it, and I kind of getting into it, watching all this stuff go by, and I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. So I take my headphones off, and I unmute it, and then, like after 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, that's why this movie sucked. Like, it's so much better with the sound off. It was so bad. But, yeah.
Well, I'm glad to know that at least the special effects holds up. That's not always the case. Sometimes the special effects can make a movie worse. I unfortunately, I really hate to say it, but I sadly had that experience. I rewatched all of the Lord of the Rings movies 2 years ago, and I had that experience with that. I was like, oh no, like it wasn't everything. I think most of the cinematography in that movie is so gorgeous. What Peter Jackson was able to accomplish. But it was the special effects moments, particularly whenever fire or magic was being used. It was like, oh no, this is, because it just looked so early 2000s. It's like, this was like late 90s, early 2000s tech on display.
And that was,
which is, I think, part of the reason many people don't like the early Star Wars movies. The episodes 1 through 3.
Well, and that's, the thing about Lord of the Rings is, I mean, that was really good CGI at the time. Like, that was praised as being like, oh my God, look at the quality of these effects, and it's so funny. To me, Avatar is such a good comparison to like Ready Player One, and I think this is where the different directors play, because I think Avatar looks worse now than it did when it came out, because everything is shot so wide that everything just kind of looks like CGI goop. But what I liked about Ready Player One, and I didn't realize this the first time I watched it, is Spielberg does a lot of close-ups on the CGI heads and faces. And they're rendered well enough that you can actually get the emotion out of it and the character out of it. It feels more realistic than most close-up CGI. And because he focuses on that, the couple times in Ready Player One where it's like the big, like aggressive shots, it doesn't look as good. But because the movie is so much smaller and close up, it works much better than something like Avatar, like you said, Lord of the Rings, where it's sort of this, or even like the George Lucas stuff, and you know, they got these big CGI battles and it looks like garbage. I think I think the technology got good enough. You could do those close-ups really nicely, and that is, I did notice that and like that.
Yeah. It's funny. I was actually thinking of Ready Player One not too long ago. It's just I think somebody mentioned there's a sequel that I never cared to read, but Ready Player Two, right?
It is. I read a lot of like reviews of it, and it is spectacular in its badness. And it's not like Ready Player One bad. It's like a whole nother level. And I don't remember all the details, but it picks up right where the first book like left off, where he's now in charge of the Oasis and all this stuff. And he basically becomes like an Elon Musk type guy where he like uses it to spy on people. And he like, it's really like right wingy kind of like it. He's like a bro in this. And it's apparently, if you get a chance to read the reviews, I'm tempted to read it on the show, but I also know I would hate doing that. So, but at least read the reviews on it. It is truly weird.
Interesting. Yeah, I knew nothing about it. I figured it was just more Ready Player One, which I wasn't ready for at the time, and I still don't really feel like I ever will be. But I would invite maybe potentially reading it on the show for a book club.
There are much better books we could.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think there are a lot of books out there, and that doesn't have to be one of them. That doesn't have to be one of them at all. So, but Sean, if you were to go and grab just a bottle of wine while watching a movie like Ready Player One, which we can do now, because now that we live in a post-movie theater world, yes, where we've defeated the movie theaters, we can do that. What wine would you be most likely to drink while watching a good film?
You know, that's a good question. And actually, I did grab a glass last night, Matt. You'll be impressed by what movie I watched. I watched it for the first time, a Steven Spielberg classic.
E.T.
A 21st century Steven Spielberg classic.
Schindler's List. No, that's not 21st century, is it? Yeah. You watched, of course, Super 8.
I think did he direct that? I thought he just produced it.
I think he just produced it. Yeah, I think it was just was heavily like influenced.
What's a Spielberg movie that like is kind of, I'll say, a fun movie?
Fun? Is that like a pun? Is there the word fun in the title?
Absolutely not.
And it's a 21st century movie?
Yes.
Oh, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Of course.
No.
That's a very fun movie.
No, although it is a bit of a caper in and of itself.
Oh, The Polar Express.
He did not direct that. You're thinking of Tom Hanks. Don't confuse the two.
Okay.
He had nothing. That was Robert Zemeckis.
Too similar. Yes.
But Tom Hanks was in this movie.
Oh.
He played an FBI agent.
Catch Me If You
Yes!
Can?
I had never seen that, and what a treat that was.
That's a good movie. I remember, I think I saw that like when it first came out. Leonardo DiCaprio is in it.
Wonderful in that. Yeah, it's on Netflix, I think, through the end of the month. So if you're looking for something to rewatch, I enjoyed it a lot. But I did sit down with a glass of white wine. I would say mid-sweet. It wasn't super sweet. Wasn't dry either. I will say, Matt, I do have a soft spot, and I get sort of some... I lose manliness credit. Sparkling wines, a nice Prosecco, in the bathtub with the bubbles in the bathtub and my glass.
I do... Nothing wrong with that.
I do like a good... Like, that's a treat bottle I'll get once in a while if I'm looking for something, and I'll see it, and I'll be like, oh, I haven't had Prosecco in a while, and that's...
No, that sounds like a real treat. It's funny how it's people say, like, they talk about shower beer and like having a bath with a glass of, like, drinking a glass of wine. It's never like the reverse, though.
I've done both in reverse. I've had wine in the shower and beer in the bath. I shouldn't admit to that.
I would just imagine the shower wine being kind of difficult, because then how do you stop the wine from getting, like, all wet and
you just keep it away from the
I
water. I mean, I've used my phone in the shower.
Oh yeah, I guess it's maybe I'm just not careful enough to. I'd be worried. I would be worried the whole time about that wine glass. But I'd be worried about the wine glass cracking.
Oh, sure. Well, you can get it like a sippy cup or something. I mean, that's the new those new like the insulated wine tumbler glasses that are very popular now with the lids on them. Perfect for any occasion.
Nice. So enjoying a nice shower wine. I guess there really is no wrong way to enjoy it.
Well, I will ask, Matt, when it comes to buying wine, of course, traditionally you've got the bottle, the glass bottle, which everyone knows. And actually I just bought this. Because I was in trouble resealing bottles with the corks and stuff. So I actually got this vacuum sealer, which comes with a little rubber silicone tip. And then you suck the air out.
Okay.
And there you go. So now it's sealed.
Interesting.
And keep it fresh, because oxygen destroys wines. It's one of its biggest enemies.
Yes, oxygen is the natural enemy of I think all fermentation.
Yes. So you got to keep it sealed. But I was going to say, Matt, are you a bottle or a box guy?
Definitely bottle. Definitely bottled. I would really like to say that I've never had boxed wine, but that would not be true. That would not be true at all. I'm definitely very much bottle.
And did you?
But that's probably true for me for most things. I wouldn't drink milk out of a box. I don't like cartons.
What about like OJ?
Usually the cartons are just very common, so I feel like I resign the fact that I have to drink it out of a carton.
So if you had the choice, if you had a bottle and a carton of OJ, you would choose the bottle.
Bottle. I would choose a bottle in most instances, I think. For almost anything. That's in liquid form.
Now, what about cans? Would you drink wine? Because you can buy wine in cans. Would you drink wine out of a can?
No. Not if I can help it. For me, it's a bottle. It's bottle.
Now, do you drink your beer out of bottles?
Yes.
So you don't usually buy beer in cans?
I will if I have to, but I definitely prefer it out of a bottle.
Interesting. Now,
yes,
you can also buy wine by the keg. Did you know that? Wine on tap?
No, I did not know that. But that makes sense. I mean, it's like anything else. It's a fermented drink that you can, pour in that way. So I wouldn't say that's surprising. I probably also wouldn't do that. Because that would just be where am I going to store a keg of wine unless I'm having like a Roman toga party or something.
Man, you'd be
I'll keep it out in my vineyard, like with my many slaves to haul the keg of wine.
I love
to toast to the goddess Venus.
I love the idea of you having like a frat party and you're like, guys, I brought a keg, and everyone cheers and you crack it open and it's like red wine.
Staining the toast.
Just getting red wine, like someone tries to do a keg stand and just covered in red wine.
These are my mom's favorite bed sheets. Now they're ruined.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So the way you described that wine in the beginning of the episode, it makes me definitely want to want to buy it. What's the name of the
Well,
wine?
so this is interesting. So the name of the service, it's a subscription wine service, and they actually don't. This one doesn't actually like take wine off the shelf and send it to you. They actually they don't make the wine themselves. They essentially private label it. And so they have like 100 different wines that you can't buy anywhere. But it's the same vineyards that make all the other wines. You know what? It's kind of like a generic brand at the store, even though it's made by the name brand people. It's called Winc, WINC.com. And I've used them a couple times before. And what's nice is they give you a little survey. And they'll be like, do you like citrus flavors? How do you like your coffee? How do you trying to get a profile of you? And then they recommend wines they think you'll like. And the prices there are coupons and stuff. I think it's like $60 for 4 bottles, which really, with shipping, which I think that's pretty reasonable. And they've always done a really good job of sending me wines I enjoy.
Wow. I just have to say, I really like the way their website is formatted just off the bat.
Yeah. It's a very nice company. The only problem I had with them is that they will send you 4 bottles every month. And if you don't drink them, they will still send them. And so I was falling behind on my bottles, and so I had to cancel it. So I'm going to try and drink all my bottles this month. But you got to be careful because they'll stack up.
Yeah, well, you just save them. Wine, that's the beauty of it, is that wine only gets better with
But if you think about it, Matt, right? If I drink 1 bottle a month, but I get 4 a month, that's 3 extra I'll have each month, times 12 months. That's 36 bottles of wine I'll have in a year.
Well, then you start giving them away.
You certainly can do that. And they're very, I will say, the label and the bottles they do a very nice job. They're very good looking bottles. The only thing is, it does say on them, imported and bottled by Winc. So it kind of gives away where it came from. But
as long as nobody knows what.
Well, that's true.
I mean, I wouldn't question it.
That's true. But yeah, it's a nice service. If you want to try out some wines, they'll get you some you've never had before.
Yeah. That it was the notes of vanilla. That's what really does.
This one in particular is, and actually I think you can buy the individual bottles from them a la carte as well. And so if you want to try it, it's the L'Atelier du Sud 2019. And I give it my thumbs up. I give it my approval. It's a French wine, and it was very nice. It was very nice.
Yeah, I'm just I don't understand the people that say like vanilla is boring. To me, vanilla is a flavor just like any other, and I like
vanilla is a flavor. It's a great flavor.
I like it, like vanilla Coke, vanilla ice cream, vanilla milkshakes, everything. I will always stand by that. It's a delicious flavor.
Now, what's your thought, vanilla versus French vanilla?
I err on the side of plain vanilla.
I agree.
Actually, I think that French vanilla it gives it a nice color, but like taste wise, it's a little eggy sometimes.
Yes.
They can go a little toasty or eggy tasting. So I definitely prefer traditional vanilla to French vanilla for sure.
Well, Matt, you give me a really good idea. I hope it's a good idea, because you mentioned, we talked a lot about wine this evening. We talked about cooking with wine. You know what we haven't done in a while, Matt, is a cooking challenge.
A bake-off. Yeah.
And I was thinking, we can certainly try. I don't know if there are any baking recipes that use wine, but I was thinking, if not, maybe we could choose the same dinner dish or whatever, that has wine, and we each make it.
Okay. I'm on board. May I suggest, we could do more research into this, but steak au poivre is something I've always wanted to try.
And how is that made?
I don't think it's terribly complicated. When I was making the steak de mi yesterday, it was I think very similar.
Oh, this looks heavy. Steak au poivre. Steak au poivre is not made with wine, according to this recipe. It says cognac. This is Elton Brown's recipe.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I've definitely seen people make it with red wine before.
Let's see what these guys say.
Yeah. Alton Brown makes it with cognac. Interesting.
No, see this
Cognac or
this
other
other site
brandy.
says brandy or
Cognac or
cognac.
bourbon. Bourbon. Yeah, I guess. Right. With red wine pan sauce. Yes. It can be made with red wine. I guess it's just not common.
What do you say about a red wine chocolate cake?
Whoa. Is that what you typed in?
I googled baking with wine, and this was one of the first recipes that came up.
I'm interested. We could try this. We could do a bake off. Yeah.
All right. Look for that in a future episode.
Yes. Red wine chocolate cake. And if you have any other recipes at home that involve cooking with wine, we would like to hear it. We would like to adventure.
Yes, give us your wine picks.
Steak demi glace is what I made yesterday with my Hellofresh kit. That is 100% a red wine recipe right there.
Any final thoughts on wine, Matt? Has this discussion made you more likely to drink wine?
Probably. I guess I have some lying around. I just chose not to drink them for this episode. I like wine. It's nice. I think some wines have different effects on me. Usually, they vary from making me really sleepy to making me just very jubilant and happy. I think they're very good, enjoyed responsibly. I'm not a big fan of rosés. I think the rosés are they're usually what gives me like a headache. And I think that might just be maybe the carbonates that are in them. I think I'm probably more likely by the end of this show to consider going out and investing more in wine. I'm more interested in the science of wine, actually, like the specific, like you said, the acidity, the microbial nature of wine, and the fermentation and the whole process. There really is a complete science unto itself. I know that if you go to a cooking school, you can take like not just classes, but entire courses based around wine.
Well, and that's why I would definitely recommend, if you get an opportunity to visit a vineyard and do a wine tasting, because it's not just about tasting the wine, but they actually do walk you through, how it's made and the different, that you're depending on the winery, it's not always the same. At a real nice winery, someone will walk you through and say, okay, this is this wine, this is how it's made, this is why it tastes this way. And you do learn something while doing it. So it might be a fun opportunity.
You just gave me a thought, Sean. I still have another 2 months left in my Audible subscription, which I canceled, but they're letting me have, I guess, 2 months left to spend the credits that I have saved up. I wonder if they have, and I canceled, by the way, nothing to do with the service. It was just I don't really drive.
Oh yeah, you used to drive a lot.
I know where to go. Yeah, used to do like 6 hours every time I would go back and forth between DC and New York. So, now I don't really do that anymore. So there's not much, and I'm not going anywhere because who is? So, I wonder if there are books on here about like wine tasting or wine.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Wine science, the science behind it. I'm sure there's tons. That's what I did like about Audible. I liked their self-help books, and I liked their self-improvement books, I should say. I liked their selection on what was it? The different like philosophy books and their Great Minds collection, stuff like that.
Have you ever used Libby?
No.
Libby. It's an app that connects you. Libraries all across the country have rights to ebooks and audiobooks. and it'll
yeah.
and you essentially connect, put in your local library number or whatever, and it gives you access to all the ebooks that the library has, but it also gives you access to audiobooks as well for free. Colby turned me on to
I
it.
actually, yeah, I have heard it. I've never used it though, but yeah, that could be a good replacement for Audible. I don't just feel like I don't
Oh
really
yeah,
use it as much anymore. I'm not driving all over the place, but this is better because it's free, of course. So I'll check that out. Libby,
cool.
save that to favorites. Save the steak
The
demi
McGlue.
glace and the red wine chocolate cake. Save that to
Oh hell
favorites
yeah.
too, and definitely revisit that another day.
Matt, what a treat this has been. I hope everyone out there enjoyed a glass with us and learned a little something about wine here on this episode. We always appreciate you joining us as always. And Matt, I got to tell you, we got some really great stuff coming up here on the program.
We do. We've got some good content.
And if I'm looking at the calendar, we over the next 4 weeks or so, we're going to be doing a live commentary on past Super Bowl halftime shows. And Matt, I've got some lined up I know you haven't seen, and they are shocking. We are also, of course, doing our Super Bowl prop bets again this year, which I'm so. Matt, do you have any sort of predictions as to who's going to be making the Super Bowl this year?
I've got my wishes and I've got my realities. So my wish is, of course, for my Saints to be in it. And I've got, let me tilt the camera there. So we got my Saints flag right there. So if it's, my wish is that it's going to be Saints Bills. That's my wish, because I feel like I wouldn't really be too disappointed either way with the outcome of that. Obviously, I'd be a little disappointed if the Saints lost, but if the Bills beat them, it's the Bills. It's like, who expected the Bills to do this? I guess I feel the same way to a lesser extent about the Browns, because I feel like the Bills deserve it, and I feel like the Browns don't because they play in Cleveland. And it's just to me, it's your fault for being in Cleveland. So, but I'd be all right either way. My realistic though, I think is just like the same as everybody else. Chiefs Packers. I think that's what everyone is kind of expecting. It's what the Vegas line has cooked up. I just hope it's not Tom Brady and the Bucs. That would be.
Yeah, I don't think they're. And I believe the Saints beat the Bucs the 2 other times they played them this year. So.
Correct. Yeah. So they're looking for the three-peat.
I'm not as worried, but no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I'd really love to see the Bills. They're sort of them and the Browns to some degree are kind of my underdog root for 'em teams. I do see the Bills giving the Chiefs a good game, but in the NFC, you look at the Saints. It's like they've just had such bad luck in the playoffs the last couple of years, and I just keep thinking, like, is this the year? And I'm like, I look at this team and I'm like, they've had from COVID problems to Drew Brees problems to, I just don't know. The Packers are firing on all cylinders. I don't know. That's going to be a real tough one. I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah. And I don't doubt. And also you have the added factor going in, that I think makes all Saints fans a little queasy, is that it's going to be at Lambeau Field, the home game, because the Packers the number 1 seed. So the Saints will be playing in the cold again. But then again, you have I think when they, you have the remember the Saints' last Super Bowl win, they had to beat Minnesota in Minnesota, I think, to get there, but they were in a dome, right? So it's a little different.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I do on some level root for Aaron Rodgers a little. I think he's too good to only retire with 1 Super Bowl. Like, I think he should win another. I do think he's that good. But I feel the same way about Drew Brees. But I just think Drew Brees, I mean, let's be real, it's probably his last year. So there's a lot of good storylines. We're going to talk about all of them. And, of course, we're going to make our famous Super Bowl prop bets, whether it's the coin toss. The halftime show, Matt, did you see who's performing this year?
It is.
I cannot name a single song from The Weeknd. So
I know
it's going to be very hard.
So I have of an advantage over you. Actually, I'm already gonna start doing my homework as we get into the episode to find some songs by.
It's going to be great. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get podcasts. Look for Up for Debate. We're on all the major platforms, and of course at our own website, upfordebate.tv. And of course, you can follow us at Up for Debate TV on Twitter, or email us upfordebatetv@gmail.com. Matt, that's all we've got tonight. I've got to go finish this bottle of wine. But we appreciate everyone for being here. On behalf of Matt, I'm Sean. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Up for Debate.